Fellow citizens, for 30 years, it's been my privilege to represent the United States overseas as a cultural ambassador. While traveling to 50 countries, I worked with schools, artists, and embassies. Sometimes I lived under communism and dictatorships. I know what life is like under tyranny, and I've witnessed revolutions, both in Prague and in Cairo. I lived with the local people, speaking their language, and adjusted myself to their culture, not because I had to, but because it made my words and actions credible to the local people. I walked the talk, performing with their musicians, working with their students, and composing for their films. I wanted to be the best American I could, not just for my country, but for my own self-respect. I've fallen down many times during my work, but I always got back up to fight until I won. I continue to believe in the blessings of the Constitution and have dedicated my work to those positive American ideals. I wanted to be part of America's warm hand of friendship to the world. The smiling faces I've received are testimonials to the effectiveness of my approach. Although I was independent, I continue to update the White House and State Department of my work, because I believe that private citizens should also represent the government of the people. Some insightful leaders in Washington were supportive of my mission. Others were just useless bureaucrats. After returning from the Middle East, I find in America, which hardly resembles the land I remember. It's become a nation where many have lost faith in their government. Many young people feel that their future has been taken from them. Some believe that the presidential election was not honest. I'd like to offer some insights to the American people regarding the present geopolitical situation. I speak as an American patriot who's lived much overseas. I view the United States culture from both a globalist and nationalist perspective. Many Americans are living in fear about the future. Many are struggling just to survive. Some believe the solution to be protests. If so, one needs to ask, is taking to the streets synonymous with taking responsibility? It seems that citizens are faced with the horns of a dilemma, whether to uphold what America has been in opposition to what some global powers want to change for the future, to brave their new world of globalism, or re-engineer our present nation through constitutional self-reliance. Americans may not be informed of this brave new world agenda, but they sense some injustice in it. They feel that something is fundamentally wrong with the entire global system. Many people sense that their governments are being controlled by powers unelected by them. Organizations such as the World Economic Forum have publicly stated that they require a great reset to build back better through a world government, which would, of course, be controlled by them. Did any of the U.S. citizens or citizens of any nation abroad vote for these self-declared officials to control humanity? I'm sure the answer is no. So why has humanity allowed it? We could stop it by massive, peaceful non-compliance in the streets. Many around the world are doing that. Humanity outnumbers these unelected technocrats, yet some haven't woken up to this global agenda. Why? The answer is obvious: media control. As people watch the mainstream media and communicate through social media, they unknowingly accept the global narrative that we are doomed by a never-ending pandemic, and only a world government will save us. This is nonsense. It's just a self-imposed mental prison of fear. In order to convince humanity that they are protecting thousands of people, these unelected oligarchs are willing to destroy the lives of billions of people. And as their profits demonstrate, they are also destroying small businesses in favor of large corporations. They demand a world-centralized government by forcing people into digital compliance through vaccinations and the abolishment of private property. These are their words. It is easy for any logical mind to see that this is diabolical. It is simply covert social control to secure their hold on abusive power through a world technocratic security state. Now, before rebelling against this tyrannical agenda, what might be the alternatives to this new world order, should humanity decide to oppose it? What kinds of legal and moral standards would we base a new United States upon? Should it continue to rest on the U.S. Constitution in its present form, or the unrest of marching mobs towards a democratically controlled anarchy? And what about the shadow government, or deep state as it's called, who influence the world from behind the scenes? For example, the intelligence agencies and military-industrial complex, which Eisenhower warned us about. These entities are intertwined into the very fabric of the military and national security, which also protect the United States. And what about elections? Americans have voted over and over for politicians in government to represent them. These elected are supposedly public servants. Nothing could be further from the truth. Many have been proven to only be bureaucrats who are controlled either through bribes, called campaign contributions, or compromise through blackmail, or are just radical ideologues. Politicians of both parties have proven to be failures in finding solutions to the people's interests. Although I've met many incompetent politicians, I've also met brilliant minds in Washington. I'm still in contact with professionals in the military, diplomatic, Secret Service, intelligence, as well as representatives at the State Department, the Congress, and the White House. I've met international businessmen and corporate interests abroad. Some were globalists, some nationalists, some capitalists, some communists, some war hawks, and some pacifists. The one continual thread that is weaved through all of these informed men of influence was the importance of not being naive. We cannot escape geopolitical reality. America has always had opponents. That will continue. We must accept the complex world as it is. We can imagine the fragrances of the future, but we must still breathe the air of today. However, that doesn't mean imposing a Pax Americana upon the world as a symbol of democracy, or a world government controlled by oil and international finance. I'd like to submit that there are various factors unknown to some Americans which might affect any sovereign American grand strategy for the future. First is the United States continuity of government. Any radical change in the governmental hierarchy could create an opportunistic divide and conquer strategy by America's military opponents. Regardless of this Orwellian dystopia, which is trying to destabilize our current system, any impulsive division would expose this flank to an easy attack, which is why the Pentagon might be hesitant to take sides during civil unrest. Second, the U.S. dollar, created out of thin air by the Federal Reserve, is collapsing and is not being accepted by some nations as a reserve currency. If that is too quickly dismantled and forced to peg with gold, all of the Western currencies might fall into depression from a devaluation. Third, hypersonic weapons have changed the rules of engagement both militarily and politically. The most powerful aircraft carrier of any nation can now be neutralized and sent to the bottom of the ocean by hypersonic missiles from a small ship. Therefore, one's military size may not be the determining factor in battle, which is why we see an enormous rush towards space weapons. Together, these and other global factors create reasons for the ambiguous situations Americans find themselves in 2021. Humans certainly do not wish to be controlled through a created pandemic, and the unstable cracks of this lockdown or lockstep strategy are becoming visible. Many can see that the emperor has no clothes. Much of the world has awakened to this covert plan, and they are rebelling against its totalitarian agenda as it affects them personally by destroying their freedoms and their ability to even survive. I wish to be clear, I do not seek independence from our present form of government. I believe citizens should seek only to be of the government as it was intended by our founding fathers. The words, "we the people," resonate in the hearts of all Americans. Shall we continue to honor the memory of our founding fathers? I say, yes. Whom of you agrees? But agreeing with the need for responsibility is not the same as being responsible by assembling in the public square. Changing the way things are has always been in fashion, but finding a better solution isn't always visible. There will always be limitations on any system, whether it's a dictatorship, a republic, or a democracy. History has taught humanity that there are cycles of change in the rise and the fall of empires. I may not live long enough to see what happens to our beloved constitutional republic, so I want to say truthfully what is in my heart. Just as I traveled the world to prove my worth to our country, I believe that Americans might want to prove their dedication by traveling outside their smartphones and begin speaking to fellow citizens face to face, physically, in the streets, as does much of the world. The freedom of assembly, assured by the United States Constitution, is still in effect, as long as Americans demand and defend it. No politician has the executive power to legally override the Constitution. No governor's mandate can step on the Bill of Rights. Private citizens should become a vocal part of their local and state government's decisions and be taken seriously in the town meetings, which should be recorded on media, broadcast on independent social media platforms which cannot be censored by global tech companies. People should start talking outside at cafes and gathering outside to address their grievances. As that is implemented, the police need to acknowledge that they are sworn to serve the public. If they abuse that authority, they must be fired, for they took an oath to protect the Constitution, which means protect the Bill of Rights. Many brave county sheriffs are now refusing to enforce ridiculous governors' mandates as they see the catastrophic economic effects on the people, which are far more damaging than any flu. We can now finally understand why humanity is witnessing the world being locked down. This is the globalist strategy of total spectrum dominance against the very solutions I recommend. Some oligarchs believe that China's Communist Party, the CCP, is a good role model for global order. They have forgotten that humanity still has the final word whenever the people decide to enforce it, using peaceful assembly and, most important, non-compliance. However, the window of opportunity is closing as those who are responsible for this pandemic become fearful of humanity being informed of their agenda. And so they are speeding up their implementation of fear, using violent, draconian measures. Will there continue to be agent provocateurs and fake news? Of course, and citizens would be wise to realize when it is happening, in order not to let the protests be hijacked and be viewed as a rebellion of anarchy and looting. It is not enough to complain online. People must act out of doors. We can still overcome the fallout from this economic destruction without being locked down, but only if we accept our own responsibility and self-proclaim we the people's authority in a new U.S. government. We ought to offer our help without asking for anything in return. I believe that this is the only option left to save our precious American Republic. Otherwise, the global lockdown shall continue into this Orwellian nightmare. Global tyranny is now at our door. Implanted nanotechnology and depopulation are some of their stated goals. This globalist agenda and those of the World Economic Forum want the sovereignty of the United States to be dissolved. They want private property to be eliminated. That is their stated and written agenda. Their globalized United States is still just a fantasy of delusion created by non-elected technocrats. We need not accept their madness. They are playing a very dangerous game, but we still hold the winning cards. I have been fortunate to represent overseas this country which I love. The Constitution granted me the freedoms to express my talents for the benefit of others. I am grateful to those in government and abroad who saw the value of my work and supported my vision. I've been fortunate to promote the United States because of great men like Samuel Adams, who envisioned men in the future, like myself, who embrace self-reliance and duty to country, regardless of personal sacrifice. When I was a boy, a visionary man said, "Ask what you can do for your country." Well, I asked, and as a Kennedy, I did. I now ask all Americans the same. Ask what you can do for your country. Will you accept this challenge of saving the Republic from globalism? If America is to lead in the international arena, it is up to the citizens to define exactly who is an American, not in 1776, but today. I am prepared to lead a third political party of independent Americans who are neither ultra-conservative nor socialistically radical, leaders who are willing to both help the homeless and also encourage the aristocratic cultural values of great civilizations throughout history, not to copy them, but to learn from them in order to enhance the minds of our young people. For discovery is the fuel which ignites the fires of the intellect. Revolutions can occur quickly and yet spiral out of control through covert intelligence agencies. But a respected ship of state is built through a dedicated alchemic transformation using the same common sense as was written by Thomas Paine. I envision a new, self-reliant, sovereign American citizenry, a nation where we, the people, finally represents ourselves honestly to the world, accepting our past mistakes, of which there are many, learning from them, and moving forward with courage. I believe it is time for a renaissance, an American renaissance, where not the title of office, but the responsibility to govern is seen as an honor, where beauty and the arts inspire the hearts of men to pursue excellence. A renaissance where nations can look to the United States for hope. Emerson wrote, "This time, like all times, is a good one, if we but know what to do with it." There are those who say that America is just another nation, and that there is no more need for the Statue of Liberty. I do not share that view. Perhaps it is true at this critical time. It is not we who need her, but she who needs us. Let the patriots of today be written into history, not as masked men of mediocrity, but rugged individuals with intelligence, eloquence, and grace. These men of virtue will breathe God's given air with courage and will be the heroes in their beloved country during this time of instability. Although these men may never live to see the gratitude of young Americans in the future, they can still be grateful today that they were the patriots who freed many from tyranny and can now stand shoulder to shoulder with America's founding fathers. For glory is not always present in the sacrifices of one's place in history, but may prove one's worth later in the quiet thoughts of great minds who are inspired by the great souls of the past. Therefore, let us listen to the voices around the world, not because we must, but because it is noble. Let us lead, not because we must, but because humanity's future may depend on it. The world is watching, waiting for Americans to once again carry the torch. May we continue to brighten the minds of those all around the world who love and will fight for liberty. Thank you.